Welcome back to another episode of The Empathy Edge, our special sub-series on what does it mean to be human, a conversation between myself and the fantastic empathy activist, author, speaker, researcher, Rob Volpe. Rob, welcome once again.
Hello, Maria. Hello, everybody. Excited to be here.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk a little bit about morality and ethics, right and wrong. And is that just a uniquely human trait? Or is it across different life forms? And also, how does it happen for us as humans, which kind of plays right into our sweet spot of empathy for you and I. But I have to digress for a second because just coming to this recording with you, I was, we were both a little bit late coming to the recording, and I was late because I knew there were some things I wanted to do before we started recording, but then I got caught up in other tasks before I got to the thing I wanted to do. And I call it my frittering away time. And it occurred to me, like, is that kind of a human trait? Are we the only ones that fritter? And, are we the only species that has to tell our teenager to get up off the couch, right? And do the thing that they're supposed to do? Or do squirrels have to deal with that when they're
Like
storing nuts for the winter? Like, hey, Larry, let's get a move on,
it sounds like a really good literary novel, The Lazy Squirrel by MariaRoss.
Next one. Next
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Published by Page Two. Yeah.
Exactly. Jesse, what do you think? Let us know. For listeners that don't know, Jesse is our publisher at Page Two that we
And
work
she's
with.
amazing.
I
Jesse
was
and Trina.
so fascinating that so it's kind of you're frittering away, but you're doing things, right? Like
But they're like a little bit wasteful. They're things that, again, like speaking of the squirrel, you're just like, hey, look, a squirrel. I have to do this one thing, right? And all of a sudden, time passes. And we talked about time previously of just like all of a sudden you're like, where did the time go, right? And so I was wondering if the ability to waste time and fritter on unproductive tasks, that might have to be an episode for the future of is that what it means to be human?
come listen to or watch Maria and Rob faff about and
Fritter about frittering.
fritter, faff, dawdle, all the things. I'm one of those people, and I think it was Adam Grant who talked about this at some point, and I felt seen. I'm one of those people that will try to get something done. Like if we have to leave,
Uh-huh.
I'm like I just gotta like deal with
This
this load of
one
laundry.
last thing.
There's one last thing. Let me hang these clothes up. Let me move this around. And then let me get that one last email out. And then we're good.
Yeah.
And God bless my husband, Charles, but he's gotten used to that habit of mine. And he just patiently waits downstairs, probably cursing under his breath. But um,
Same.
same.
Paul's like, if you tell me one more, it's just going to take me a second, one more time.
I mean, in this sort of time distortion, like
Uh-huh.
1 second is 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
when I was younger, a really good friend of mine, Melissa, she and I used to go to the movies all the time. We lived in LA back then, and I would always be like five. He would say, "Oh, let's meet at 2:30,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'd be there at like 2:35,
Right.
plenty of time before the movie, but she was like, I waste so much time waiting for you.
Yeah.
And so I do try. And
Uh-huh.
I've never missed a flight. So I do have some
So
sense of
something's
like I
going
can
right.
get
Yeah.
there. But then there's the other side of that elasticity of the time. And then I have heard stories of, and they talk about gay time and, where gays are always late. Like that's
Wha-
a
I was like, what
which
is
is a,
that?
which is a stereotype. I have some gay friends that are very prompt, but there was just
Right.
always this thing like gays are always like 45 minutes late to whatever. Dinner's at 7, they'll be there at 8,
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
thing. And you
That's
just kind
awesome.
of learn to roll with it. But there is, and in that point, there is this, and I am mindful of the respect of other people's time. And
Mm-hmm.
there is a feeling of if I'm the one that's sitting there waiting for you, you are not respecting me.
Mm-hmm.
And I am sensitive to it, but I hate using the word but because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
whenever I'm really mindful of using the word but because then I feel like it negates
Mm-hmm.
the other person and it's
How
like,
about
okay.
and yet?
And yet, oh, I love that.
Yeah.
However, has
However,
been my
yeah.
go-to. Um, and yet there's something in my wiring
Yeah.
about like one more thing,
Hmm.
getting one more thing done. I was running into this morning as we were running a few minutes late. I was experiencing mental time travel, which we talked about in the last episode,
Hmm.
episodic stuff. I was thinking about an email that I had gotten from a colleague, and then I went flashed back to earlier emails, maybe emails from a client that did whatever, and then he was jumping forward to and even projecting into, "Grr, I'm going to be,
Uh-huh.
when really it's fine. It's like
It's all fine. Yeah.
finding time to have a meeting. And
Yeah.
so it's so not a big thing, but
Hmm.
it was as I was showering and getting ready, it just was taking over. And I noticed I was like, ooh, I'm mentally time traveling right now.
So you noticed it. That's great. Well, yeah. So anyway, put a pin in it. Let's talk about the ability to
The
faff around.
ethical dilemma of being
Yeah.
frittering.
Yeah. Yeah. So today we want to explore this core question of like, how do we as humans develop a moral sense? And is it biological, social, or something else entirely? And again, is that we got answers around ethics and morals when we did our informal survey for other people on what does it mean to be human? Things like you're able to know right from wrong. You're able to show empathy. You're able to feel guilty about something. So maybe we should start with just sort of how do we even get our ethics as human beings, right? How do we build these ethical codes? And I did a little bit of research on this,
Hmm.
and it turns out there's a variety of ways that we get our ethics. It's evolutionary foundations, right? So, and you and I both know this, humans are hardwired for empathy. It's
Yeah.
how our species has survived and evolved, how we have, survived in groups. It's just, as I always say in my talks, for some of us, the muscle has atrophied. And for some of us, it's very strong, right? There's also cultural transmission, right? What we learn from our parents, what we learn from our tribe, our
Hmm.
cultural norms, our values. And then there's also personal reflection. And I find this one really interesting because sort of as you leave your nest, being a child to an adult, it's your own personal reflections and growth journey that starts to shape your ethics and your morals.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you start doing work on yourself and as you start experiencing the world, as we start evaluating our different experiences. So, what do you think about all that? Well, number one, do you agree with those things? Are we leaving anything out of how humans form their ethics? And two, are we the only creatures that do that?
I don't disagree with the three kind of buckets. It makes sense. There's some hardwired ethical behaviors
Hmm. For
that
survival.
for survival and supporting the group and
Hmm.
don't, you know, don't eat your don't eat your brother. Um,
For some
um,
groups.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, that's true. And how hungry are you? But then, yeah, what are the societal norms
Hmm.
that start to get established? And I really think about the familial group and even within empathy. I'm rewriting the introduction to my book as we're going into a paperback version this fall.
Hmm.
Tell me more about that, Solving the Empathy Crisis, one conversation at a time, available wherever you buy books. But as I'm rewriting it, I am talking about some of the factors that go into our ability to have empathy and how, you mentioned it's a muscle. I talk about it as there's so many analogies that are so appropriate. It's a muscle. I talk about it now as a superpower, and it's
Hmm.
this neglected superpower. And we need to have our superpower demonstrated and modeled by the caregivers and
Yeah.
nurturers and role models in our life. And I think ethics, it's
Hmm.
the same thing. We're teaching people how to be little humans and little
Hmm.
adults, and then they kind of grow up. But then you go out on your own, and I mean, it's kind of the situation of you meet the parents of, a bad crime happens, and you meet the parents, and you're like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
okay, the morals and ethics of this criminal or accused criminal are so completely different from this adult. Like something happened. And I
Yeah.
think that is that personal in adulthood. We do have choices. There are probably external forces as well. And
Hmm.
then how we're reacting to those forces is making a difference.
Hmm. Well, and I find it interesting that, you know, Are we the only species that has different groups with different cultural norms and ethics? For example, think of all the circles you operate in, right? And for everyone listening, right? You've got your family's code and your family's ethics. You have the moral code or ethics, maybe of your neighborhood and your neighbors and your community. You may have a completely different code of ethics and morality stance within your workplace, right? We talk about workplace culture.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's such a uniquely human thing because I don't think, ferrets or birds shapeshift depending on where they are. They sort of
Right.
have a species wide or a clan wide ethic that doesn't shift based on what they're doing in the given day that they're in or who they're around.
Don't eat your brother. Yeah.
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 But are we
They're
like, I
ethical
feel like we're the
standards
Yes, but we go
that,
into different environments where the codes change. And I think that's where many of us as humans have misalignment.
well, and just to thought drift on this, how is that different or similar to, so there's pack behavior
Hmm.
or a flock. You were mentioning birds.
Hmm.
There's a flock of birds, and they know, oh, we're all migrating, and we're doing this, and we're moving this way or that way. Like, how much of that is instinctual versus? I mean, it's not an ethical.
Hmm.
Well,
They're
stick
not making it,
together.
you're saying there might not be judgment there, right?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
just instinctive. Oh, that's a good description or distinction. There's not judgment, that's instinct for birds to go fly together, but the maybe is it an ethical
Mm.
consideration to stay together as a flock, or is that still instinct?
Well, I did a little research on that too about if other species have ethical codes the way that humans do. And the results were that they don't necessarily have codified ethics or
Hmm.
things of that nature. They don't have a Plato and a Socrates and and a Bible and all those kinds of things, right? The Quran. But they said that highly social species do enforce unwritten social norms, such as fairness, cooperation, and hierarchy. And those who repeatedly violate those rules often face ostracism, aggression, or permanent exile to maintain group cohesion. And the examples were like chimpanzees and baboons, wolves, crows and ravens. And this one was interesting, honeybees and ants. So,
Ooh.
yeah, but I think to your question, that might just be an instinctual biological imperative of if you act this way, we may not survive.
Right, right, exactly. Like everybody has to pull their weight, so to speak.
Hmm. Hmm. I love this. It said this in here. Speaking of what I was talking about earlier about the lazy squirrel, it did say for honeybees and ants that, in quotes, cheaters or slackers who disrupt the harmony of the hive are aggressively removed or blocked from entering.
That is wild. Cheaters or slackers. The cheating honeybee, the
It's like,
slacker,
no,
slacker
bro, you're
ants.
not coming in. You're not coming in now. We've had it with you.
Slacker ants, a tale of spinsters solving crimes from the comfort of
Their hive.
their hive.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. But yeah, like
Um,
to your point, I don't know that that's a moral code. That may just be a survival instinct.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think similarly, you had shared about like wolves, and
Hmm.
again, you got to participate in the hunt. There's a code of conduct
Hmm.
of what's expected. But that sort of the idea of a code of conduct, you've got to pull your own weight, which I think it falls as a code of conduct. That would be something that's an ethical, behavioral group um, influenced
Hmm.
behavior rather
Hmm.
than instinct,
Hmm.
because the lazy wolf or the frittering wolf might be like, oh, wait, one more thing. I'll join that hunt, but
I just got to finish this email.
I'm influencing on TikTok right now, and I've just got to get one more thing
I
done.
gotta, I just, my people need me. Um, yeah, I was gonna say something to that and it just completely went out of my head because you made me laugh with this idea of having the one last email to send. But I mean, I think it's this, but oh, I know what it was. So let's go back in time to like, let's go back millennia, right? And we're
Yeah.
saying that these are sort of ingrained instinctual social norms within these groups.
Yes.
How did they start?
for survival of the group is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Like
But
we
no one implicitly or explicitly stated it, right? So to your point, is it about modeling and
or
ostracization? I don't know what the
did
verb of that is.
somebody get pissed off because that,
Yeah.
you know, that lazy Neanderthal just won't participate in the hunt? And we
Right.
got woolly mammoths to kill, and it takes all of us to pull down the woolly mammoth, but we didn't, and now I got impaled by the horn, and I'm not
Right.
happy.
Well, because humans set these standards before they had speech.
Yes, that's
So
fascinating
it had to
too.
be modeling, it had to be cause and effect
Before we
and
had speech
physical.
and before we really had storytelling,
Yes.
is the thinking. We don't have the
Hmm.
stories from back then to know for
Right.
sure, but that's the thinking about it in the way that it has developed over time. So yeah, I would think it's an evolutionary there's an evolutionary factor,
Hmm.
survival of the fittest, Darwinian sort of a thing
Hmm.
where the group is not going to survive if the group isn't all contributing and playing their part,
Hmm.
which you see to play out today in teams. Like what happens when at work
Hmm.
when you've got somebody that's not pulling their weight, or you're in the neighborhood and the people down the street have the ugly yard because they've not tended to it, and
Yeah.
you want to throw them out. You can't, but you'd love to
Yeah.
like throw them out, but you ostracize them, perhaps.
Yes. And you just sparked something for me. You know what's interesting about that that's uniquely human is that humans have to explicitly state things at times, right? That's why you have homeowners associations.
We need to have
Whereas we
mechanisms.
need to have mechanisms and we need to have things told and written down and like, hey, we're all agreeing to this. We almost humans have evolved to the point that they need the clarity because we are so diverse. I mean, if you even think about social norms from state to state in the United States or from country to country across the world, right? And then various socioeconomic groups within those cultures, there's different ethics, there's different norms, there's different values. And so we evolved to such diversity that there became a need to codify for us versus like the birds or the squirrels. They don't
Right.
have a document, right? They don't have a like a discussion about this. They don't have the great philosophers writing this stuff down and telling these stories. We started to need that as human beings, and I wonder why.
Well, I think it became easier to get everybody aligned, but also to pass on the traditions
Mm.
of, it actually probably did become much easier to survive when you weren't relying on, oh, did father tell son, mother tell daughter, mother tell
Mhm.
son, whatever, the
Mhm.
dynamic of how to do something
Mhm.
or a way to behave, or the most effective way we've learned to kill the saber-toothed tiger is,
Is
this.
X. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the storytelling helps tell the tale. The
Right.
drawings on the cave wall, like, and who is that person that was like, this burnt piece of wood in the
Yeah.
cave is going to be, or I presume that's what they started with. I wonder if they even was like, ooh, a berry, and look at how that stains my fingers. What happens if
Yeah.
it stains the wall?
Yeah.
But that was early storytelling. And
Right.
that's evolved into how we communicate. It's evolved into how we keep people organized
Mhm.
and in the right sort of ethical behaviors of
Mhm.
society.
Mhm.
And then that's also always changing and evolving. And we see that in our time
Mhm.
as people of a certain age, and also when you think back to our parents' generation, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's where religious texts are all story based. No matter
Yeah.
what religion, it's all based on parables and stories and and it's great. Like corporate communications could learn a thing or two from the way religious texts are formatted because it's about stories. I remember when I was doing my brand strategy work with clients and we would talk about values and mission and vision. And part of what I would encourage them to do is collect the
Mm.
stories, like what are the famous stories that everybody tells in support of these values that you hold dear. Document the stories, pass those on. That's how you keep your DNA as you grow and as you scale, right? And so we figured out as humans somewhere along the way that that was going to be useful to us to be able to pass that down. But you also sparked another thing that kind of goes back to we have such diversity within the human species of how what we think is right and wrong. Like, this is why we have debate. This is why we have conflict. This is why we have discourse, right? And that, you can look at the quote unquote way things are done, right? Like parenting, as an example. There's so many different schools of thought for how to be a good parent, for how
Mm,
to be, have raise healthy children. And we have, at least in Western culture, we've kind of come to this agreement of well, your way, my way might not be your way.
right.
And
But I'm
yet,
sure I'm going to make some snarky comments about the behavior
well,
of your
yeah, that's a whole
child.
separate thing. But yeah, but I mean, I find that interesting that there's no uniformity within our species because of the complex diversity of
Yeah, I mean
people's experiences. Yeah,
we're not a small enclave living in a cave. I think if you
right.
found there must be a study out there somewhere about this, but I think if you were to look at small pockets of communities, they
Mm-hmm.
are probably more assimilated and
Mm-hmm.
parenting in the same way. They have the same ethics and
Right.
hopefully morals
Right.
as everyone else in the group, and that's because it's really small.
Mm-hmm.
Hold that thought. Domino is in rare form today this morning.
So will
But
you
can,
oh, sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say one of the things I think I always question with empathy, even related to that idea of like the small communities, I often talk about globalization and
Mm-hmm.
how that has affected our ability to have empathy. And so as I look at even Susan Conrath's landmark University of Michigan study from way back 15, 16 years ago that found that 40% decline in college students of the ability to find or see the point of view of their peers, it's like, well, is it really that the empathy has declined, or is that our exposure to different views of ways of thinking and behaving has actually expanded
Mm-hmm.
because our world has gotten smaller
Mm-hmm.
through, travel, through TV, through all of
Social
the social
media.
media
Yeah.
technology, um, that maybe our ability to have empathy hasn't changed, but the people that we are asked to have empathy with
Mm-hmm.
has differed. And I often talk about, especially like emotional empathy,
Mm-hmm.
there's more of a barrier for people to get into an emotional space than a cognitive
Because
place.
not everybody's wired that way.
Not everybody was wired that way, but who are
Mm-hmm.
you more likely wired with? The people that lived in the cave with you. And
Right.
I used to use the analogy of like, it's like when you were in the cave and
Right.
everybody in the cave had the same values and morals, behaviors. But when the cave down the road came over, they had a totally, and were like, hey, we want to cut all those trees down and try something we're calling farming.
Right.
And you're like, what?
Right.
And you have to there, and there's dissonance there, and you have to overcome all the steps, all the barriers to empathy using the 5 steps in order to reach some sort of alignment and go, oh yeah, farming would make it a lot easier to gather
Yeah.
if we grew it all right there.
But the
But
fact that we as humans even needed empathy to see another point of view is uniquely human to me because you don't have other species needing to see another bird or another fox's point of view in order to
right,
coexist,
right.
right? It's not that drastically different.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like the and I think the last episode I was talking about the savannah quite a lot when I'm out
Yeah,
with my
we
lion
were.
friends hunting,
Yes.
and
We were on a Lion King kick. I don't know what that was about. Yeah.
we were, I will not sing Hakuna Matata, but as you don't see the lions, staring at the herd of antelope, gazelle, whatever, and one of the lions go, I'm feeling like zebra today, but like going off in another direction.
Yeah.
That's not how that works.
And there's not
So,
another lion going, tell me about that. Tell me
right.
more. Why are you
So
feeling
tell me
zebra
more.
today?
What is it about today that makes you curious for zebra? How do you prepare the zebra? Where do you start when you eat the zebra? Is it
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. I would love if you talk a little bit about the research you found from De Waal about, and I don't know if I ever am pronouncing his name correctly. De Waal, I believe it is.
The wall?
Dewaal.
Yes.
Um, Looking at the building blocks of morality.
Yes. So when you think about morality, and when you think about so morals, ethics are when I've the way I understand ethics and morals, ethics are the things that society sort of infuses and requires of us. Morals are the personal choices that we're
Oh,
making.
okay.
And De Waal in his research found that there are these like, yeah, there are these building blocks, there are these parts that you've got in order to build a moral system. You've got to have empathy.
Hmm.
Makes sense. You've got to have a sense of fairness. That's where narcissists and people on the antisocial disorder, a sociopath, a psychopath, they get in trouble. They don't have a sense of fairness. It's all about me and what I want. They
Hmm.
need to have a sense of cooperation as well.
Hmm.
And all three of those things, I think actually all three of those things are very closely linked, but
Hmm.
I like that he's broken those apart. And that helps create, as he called it, a moral system.
Hmm.
Um, and it, kind of to your point, even about my tangent on the zebra preferences of select lionesses in the savannah. Um, what doesn't what he was finding what he wasn't seeing in other primates
Hmm.
was a reflexive layer. So that asking why is something wrong. So feeling guilty rather than just feeling the consequence of something. So
Hmm.
it's this idea of the concept of a moral self
Hmm.
that can fail on its own. So
Hmm.
there's this like behavioral moral distinction. So like chimps can register unfairness, but they don't seem to lie awake at night in moral anguish. They're not
Like we
ruminating
do. I
over
couldn't sleep last night because I was upset about the way I might have treated somebody or that something was unfair at work or,
it.
all the
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
all the things. How did that conversation could have gone better? Worrying about the conversation I'm going to have, which see the last episode 4
Hmm.
about our sense of self, future dreaming, hope,
Hmm.
and all of that anxiety kind of comes along with it.
Right. Right. Well, and also I saw that you found that chimps and bonobos exhibit generosity, gratitude, justice, grief, forgiveness, consolation, and friendship, which
Hmm.
many people and a few people in our survey even mentioned some of these
Yeah,
previously were attributed solely to humans,
yeah,
right?
yeah. There was something I read about how like apes will mourn. I think when we were talking about death and we were talking
Hmm.
about the whale pushing its calf, dead calf,
Mm.
around for quite a while, apes apparently will mourn and return to the death. I don't think maybe it was inferring the sight of the death of a loved one or part
Oh,
of its family.
wow.
Yeah, like a year later, like it
Yeah.
doesn't. It's not there. It's it's object permanence, or where it's like, oh, if I see it, it exists, but if it disappears, it's gone.
Right.
Which is something that toddlers go through when
Yes.
parents like go away. Whoa, whoa, what happened? Understanding, oh, they're going to come back. Like they apes have clearly gotten beyond that stage where they understand this thing is actually like it's died, it is gone. And
Wow.
they recognize that.
Because I was going to say, like, from the grief and mourning perspective, like the fact that we have rituals around our dead and we remember, we revisit, we go back, and then you just shared that story. And I'm like, okay, so that's not uniquely human either,
No,
necessarily.
not necessarily.
Yeah.
We have rituals that we've developed around it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. Shiva in the Jewish community looks very different than Shiva with, or that idea of mourning the dead over the course of a year in another
Hmm.
community. And they're not communicating with us in English or another spoken language that we understand at this point.
Right.
Oh, speaking of that, have you heard about the Doolittle Prize out of Berkeley?
No, share.
Okay, so I'm always like, ooh, half of the information. Um,
As my husband says to me, good story, Maria.
there is a wealthy individual that funded a
I'm going to look this up
research
while you're talking.
prize. I think it's out of Berkeley, and it's like the Doolittle Prize, and it is about communication with and understanding communication with animals and other living species.
Yes. So
And
what's
that,
interesting is that, sorry, I just found this. Someone was awarded this for using artificial intelligence and machine learning to decode the vocabulary of zebra finches
yes,
for two-way interspecies communication. That's what the prize was. It's the Collar
the big
Doolittle Prize
prize,
is what it's called.
the $10 million grand prize is interspecies communication.
Wow.
The bigger one, or then the lesser
This is
prize
a
on an
lesser one.
annual basis is like, ooh, we've decoded the way zebra finches, I forgot what it was they were communicating about, but it deciphered all these different calls
Uh-huh.
that they were making and the ways that those calls were coming out and what it was actually saying.
Wow.
Um, and as I'm saying that, I'm going, but wait, Rob, what about the chimpanzee that knows how to press the button? And like we've seen that kind of rudimentary communication, but the issue there is it's not, we're making the chimpanzee communicate in a form of English
Got it.
or a language that we understand
Right.
versus truly bridging that
Right.
talk to the animals, as Dr. Dolittle
Well, and
famously
that
did.
begs the question of if they do have this language, if other species have this language, then maybe eventually they will start articulating their moral codes and their ethics, right? To each
Yeah.
other. Maybe
Like,
that they will evolve to the point that like, oh, the clan that communicated these rules to their young survived versus this other one that didn't, right? Oh, we all need to start doing that.
well, yes, the dog that ends up actively communicating where the human understands, oh, Fido wants to sit at the table for this, and this reason. Fido is going to get propagated. Like they're going
Yeah.
to, make Fido the super dad of all dogs for the next, period of years.
Yeah.
And yeah, so talking to animals and communicating, and they do have things that we're not aware of.
Right. And
Like,
that's why they may be communicating moral codes to each other. We don't know. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah, like the moral values of that's interesting.
Like you shouldn't have taken Roger's fish. Like that was a bad thing to do for the group. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
you?
well, and yeah, that's interesting. So like I've got three cats. They're all
Yeah.
very different. If we get upset with one of them for bad behavior that doesn't fit our ethical, like like
The ethics
Domino.
of your home. Yeah.
Yeah, let me just say it. I mean, cats are 15, so all of them, they're siblings from the same litter. So Domino likes she I think she's got some wires crossed. She poops outside of the litter box. Always near the litter box, but never very rarely in the litter box. So that's a thing. And we've gotten upset with her. This has been going on for 2 years now. So we have gotten upset with her, scolded her, done, whatever we could. Her siblings don't seem to register that she's, like they're not in trouble, so they don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, whatever, this doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
So I don't see that they're, following her going, hey, get in there. Come on. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Don't mess this up. We got a
Right.
good thing going.
Right. Right. I want to switch gears for a second because you
Please.
found some information from Jonathan Hyde, if
My
I'm
favorite,
pronouncing
hate,
that
hate,
well.
hate. It's not hate, but it's height.
Haidt, Haidt. We'll put his link in the show notes.
Author of The Anxious Generation, the current
Yes.
bestseller. He's a psychologist, done a lot of work looking into moral development, moral compasses, and how
Hmm.
we develop those. Most recently, The Anxious Generation is looking at he's done a meta-analysis of a lot of the studies around
Yeah.
social media.
I couldn't finish his book. It was too dark and gloomy for me. I couldn't, as a mom, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I could see
Yeah.
that. I haven't read the book. I've read shorter pieces that he's written. He and
Yeah.
Scott Galloway are friends, so he's been on his podcast a few times. I've listened to those conversations and I get what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, what he was finding was that we have five foundations to build this moral compass, yeah, to program in our moral compass, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, and there, it's interesting. So they are paired foundations. So
Okay.
care and so it's almost like there's little spectrums.
Okay.
Care and harm is one. Fairness and cheating is another.
Hmm.
Loyalty, betrayal is the third. Authority, subversion is the fourth.
Hmm.
And then sanctity, degradation is the fifth. And so within each one of those, different cultures, political orientations, subgroups weigh these things differently on that spectrum.
Hmm.
Fairness versus cheating, for example. And that explains how two different groups can believe they're acting morally while the
Right.
other group is like, what are you doing?
That was my point earlier about
Yeah.
you've got all this diversity and you're being immoral. No, we're being moral, you're being immoral because we have different codes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are somewhere in different places on
Right.
that boundary. And, I guess some people would be okay with harm, but maybe that in their moral code, I guess it's what are we talking about with harm versus
I
care?
I can give an example,
Oh, please.
the abortion debate. There
Yes.
are people who believe that they are on the care side because they are, pro-choice, protecting the life of the mother, and there are those who believe that that is on the harm side of taking an innocent life.
Yeah,
And they both think they're right morally.
that is true. And in
So,
their communities and their
mhm,
cultures, they are morally correct.
in their own circles that they choose to be in. Yes.
Right. And
Hmm.
then let's then go back into De Waal and the building blocks of morality.
Hmm.
It is like where are you orienting your empathy or
Hmm.
your sense of fairness or your cooperation? And
Hmm.
there's a choice, and that's morals are all about choices. There's a
Hmm.
choice that's being made on which end of that debate you are leaning or
Hmm.
falling and
Hmm.
advocating for.
Hmm.
And yet, empathy can actually, like, maybe we can talk. Like, how
Yeah,
do
well,
we,
that's where our empathy work lies, is like,
right,
how do you bridge that gap between your different
points of
potentially
view?
moral or ethical codes?
Right,
And again, not walk away converted, because that's not the point. It's not about, I'm going to convince you that my code is right and yours is wrong. I just want to better understand. I still don't agree with you, but now I understand where you're coming from. I understand why you think or feel the way you do.
right. And then we love to point out the sort of moral pretzels we tie ourselves in as we justify, well,
Yes.
I'm, life of the mother over the child, but kill the criminals, that death penalty, or
Right. Right.
the contradictions, because we do tend to put more moral weight
Hmm.
on different things. And
Right.
that's where, you get into like one issue voters. It's like, what is that big weighty thing?
Right.
Would
Right.
have I would not be able to vote for someone that advocated for anything that would take away rights and protections to
Hmm.
the LGBTQ community because I am part of that community and therefore it would be
Right.
harming me.
Right. Right.
Morally, that is my number one. And then the rest of it has some degree of negotiation, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
And yet, I'm not totally a one issue voter, but if it's that issue, then
Right.
I am.
Right.
Um, and that's about my own sense of, I mean, that gets into morality, but it's also,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's
And
also,
what
I view it as survival.
Yeah.
for myself.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well,
And
and I think,
that's the thing that people don't then appreciate. And I know this is different. Well, it's not really different from, well, we'll come back to abortion in a second. That's what I don't think people always appreciate. And as I've had conversations in my last newsletter, I was talking about my experience with at the Retired Men's Association of Greenwich. And I was approached, and I'm sure this happens to you as well, where it's like, how do I talk to my family member who, my son who has Trump derangement syndrome? So he's a member of the far left, and he was just absolutely out of his mind about and upset, out of his mind in an upset, emotional way
Mhm.
about the things that are going on with the Trump administration. And this gentleman the dad was taking it from a very kind of rational, logical place of like, well, shouldn't Iran not have nuclear weapons? And, it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. But what I suggested to him, I was like, well, if your son is coming at it from an emotional place, you need to reframe your conversation because you've got to help unpack and understand his emotions and what is bothering him about all of this so that you can listen and then maybe you can find common ground
Mhm.
and help. Maybe you're going to see a different point of view. Maybe he's going to see a different point of view, and you'll at least come to a place of respect for each
Mhm.
other's perspective, but to kind of defuse that. And
Mhm.
so related to the gay argument, for me, it's an emotional thing because it is about me as a human and my right to exist, where
Right.
somebody who's has a different perspective it doesn't matter to them. It's like me regulating whether you can wear blue shirts or not.
Mhm.
So sorry,
Yeah.
you have a thought.
No, I'm just kind of trying to get back to this morals and ethics thing versus just purely political. And I'm wondering if I believe, and you tell me if you agree with this statement, that we as humans do have a fundamental shared moral code about some things, right? I'm not
Yes.
saying people don't break those norms or break those rules, but we fundamentally, all as humans, no matter where we live, fundamentally believe that murder is wrong. Like
Yes.
you go to your neighbor and you shoot them or you knife them or whatever, right? And I think in most cultures, and again, it doesn't mean we follow these morals or ethics all the time, but if you asked the average person in many different places, right? Murder is wrong, lying is wrong, right? Being distrustful, all of these things. There's a few shared moral codes across the human species. Do you believe that's true?
I would like to believe
I mean,
that's true.
I
I
think
think
they
at
are. I'm
some
not sure.
at
Yeah.
some level it absolutely is. I don't
Hmm.
want to, again, I think you have to, roughly 10% of the population is on that antisocial disorder spectrum,
Hmm.
extreme narcissism, sociopath, psychopath. So you
Right.
got to take that out because they're
Right.
not in the same sort of moral consideration set. But then the rest of us, yes, there is probably a general space in the
I mean,
care
maybe
harm
it's like five things,
continuum.
but we all
Yeah.
maybe
Well,
agree
and
to
it's
them.
probably
Yeah.
all in hates the building blocks or the five foundations.
Yeah.
But how far do we end up going? And is it individual versus societal versus the way that that gets played out
Right.
in our choice for government and leaders where if we're living in a place where we do have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's so okay, so what would those five
Well, that's what I'm
foundations?
I'm like I'm wondering if you could get the entire world to collaborate on a mission articulation exercise or a moral could we all agree to at least 3 to 5 things?
I have a right to exist. And not just me, Rob. I think every individual has a right to exist. Is that
I don't
moral?
know that every human believes that. If you look at some of the war-torn areas, if you look at the Middle East, if you look at terrorism, if you look at,
But that the every individual in that war-torn area believes that they have their own right to exist.
I believe
That
everyone thinks they have their own right to exist.
right. You definitely agree. People
Yeah.
do not think that others have the right to exist.
Yeah.
So
So
I
I
don't
don't
know
know
where
if
that
that's
leaves us on
one.
that
And,
one.
maybe I'm even wrong about the murder thing. Like, maybe to some people it might be, well, like, did the person wrong me? Then murder's okay.
Right. Right.
But maybe it's
Exactly.
unfair
But
murder, like that people can all agree on.
well, yeah, the idea of
The
vigilante justice versus just like kind of going about our
sanctity of
day-to-day
life.
life, the
Yeah.
sanctity of life,
Yeah.
right? And which then gets into the abortion thing of
Exactly.
sanctity of
So
whose life.
so this is
And
an interesting thought experiment because I don't know that we do have 3 to 5 common ones across
no,
every culture or community in the world.
well, I was just Ezra Klein has a new episode of his podcast out as the day that we're recording this, and he interviews Chris Rufo, who is a conservative slash far right thinker, writer, journalist. I'm using air quotes. I think he's a journalist. He's one of his claims to fame right now is he was the one that really pushed the advocating of getting rid of DEI.
Hmm.
And the government and the Trump administration picked him up on it, and
Hmm.
away we went, and here we are.
Right.
But as one of the other things that he did, his publication or group did a story about the Somali fraud in Minnesota and wrote some stories
Wasn't that an alleged
that.
or
Uh,
there was some element of truth to that?
there's some element of alleged in terms of like how big it is. Is
Okay.
it and is it going back to uh fund terrorism? They're not
Hmm.
totally sure. It's all
Hmm.
murky. But then Ezra Klein was pointing out how that led to all the outrage about Minnesota and ICE coming in. Renee Good and Alex Preddy get murdered by ICE, and
Hmm.
then we have all of that issue. And what Ezra Klein points out by the end of the interview, he's like, okay, so you're against fraud over here, but let's talk about it. And it had come up a couple different times. They were talking about it in the sense of virtue, which I think is really around the morals and ethics in which you live by. You're against fraud over here, but you're not really calling out the fraud that's happening within the Trump administration with the crypto, with the deals and investments by
With the
foreigners, with
mobile company, with
the
all the, yeah.
all the self-dealing that's going on,
Hmm.
and why is that? And they Ezra Klein explores it more than Chris Rufo openly admits to it, but it's the idea that Trump's a strong man, and
Hmm.
therefore if you disagree with the strong man, you get booted out because you're not following then the new ethics and morals of that administration.
Hmm.
And they point out that and so it's just an example of you can be against something over here, but
Hmm.
it's the both siderism. You're okay against
Hmm.
it here in this case, but you're not over here. And if people could be honest with themselves, if they can
Hmm.
see that, then those times that happens, and then just ask themselves why, what is that? Where is that coming from?
Hmm.
Because those are moral decisions that people are
Right.
making.
Right.
Is it because the Somalis are from Africa, they're immigrants, they're black, so is that a racist thing? Is it
Hmm.
something else? Is it then why not over here on the other side?
Right. And
God,
again,
this is
like I
complicated.
know I'm the one that keeps doing this. Like again, very uniquely human to even be thinking about the negotiation of that we spend cycles on in our own heads
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hearts on that code rather than it's like, yep, we all agree to this.
Yes,
And so
exactly.
like even just talking through this with you of like, because I think I always did think, oh, at least overall humanity can agree on a few things. I'm actually a little discouraged by our thought experiment because
Well,
I don't know that we can.
I would love for people to, in the comments, reach out to us on the socials, email us,
Yes.
whatever, connect with us, and just let us know. Like, what are the three things you think all humans humans around the world might agree to
In
that
terms
are,
of morals and ethics. Yeah.
thank you, in terms of morals and ethics. And I want to just touch on this idea of how we go about changing minds, because storytelling is actually really important in this. But there's also the idea then of um, And it actually relates to everything that we were just talking about. But Peter Singer has a book from 1981 called The Expanding Circle. And the idea is that the moral logic doesn't change, but the scope of who it applies to is what expands. So his argument is that altruism begins as genetically based to
Mm-hmm.
protect one's kin and community members, um, but that it's a consciously chosen ethic with an expanding circle of moral concern, and that human ethics cannot be explained by biology alone, as we've been talking about, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's our capacity for reasoning that makes moral progress possible. And so when I think about the arc of the gay community, just to go back to that, and the way
Mm-hmm.
that we've become more accepted, it is in that idea of, and it's using story to help people see and connect and understand, to build
Mm-hmm.
empathy with, so
Mm-hmm.
that you can change hearts and minds and bring more people so morally they are not opposed to, and you've
Mm-hmm.
seen that in the data, the acceptance of different communities, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
keep going back to the queer community, the acceptance of the queer community in the general population. That's grown. The acceptance of gay marriage has also grown. Recently, it's taken a little dip amongst Republicans, but it's still generally the majority of the population. I
Mm-hmm.
remember 30 years ago when I was involved in the beginnings of that fight that that was not the case. And it
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of changing hearts and minds. So it was that expansion of who people were morally concerned about.
Mm-hmm. I think it echoes that quote of the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
I love that.
And I
Yeah.
love that quote. Well, this is such a great conversation. I love the what you pose to our listeners of letting us know what you think are the common moral or ethical codes. What can we all agree on from every corner of the world, every pocket, every culture or community? Are there at least three to five common agreements we could have about what is moral, what is right, what is just? Let us know. Let us know on Instagram. I neglect to tell you, let us know on LinkedIn. You can find us both on LinkedIn. We have all the links in the show notes. But I'm on Instagram at Red Slice Maria. Rob?
I am on Instagram at Empathy Activist. You can find us on YouTube where you might be seeing this or listening.
Yes.
It's not hard to find us. We are present. Look for Empathy Activist, look for Red Slice
We are
Maria.
omnipresent. And again, like I've been saying throughout this whole series, this is not about us giving the answers. We're just having the conversation and asking the provocative questions of what does it mean to be human? So thanks, Rob, once again for a delightful conversation.
Maria, thank you. This has been amazing. We
Even
only have,
without your coffee, you did so well today.
even without coffee, we did so well. We're recording this in the morning. I have a medical appointment this afternoon. I am not able to have coffee before that. I question my choice of timing for that appointment, but I'm just going to smile. I only got a few more hours to go.
Great. And we have one more episode in this sub-series left. Yes. So we
No.
need to know what you guys think. So please, or you guys and gals, what you think about this topic and what you think about this sub-series overall. Let us know. Reach out. And thank you for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Please rate, review, and share it with a friend or a colleague. And until next time, please remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Stay well and be kind.